Charlie, for that important overview of the energy policy. And next, we turn to John Harrigan. And you're going to love this introduction, okay? I'm not big into reading introductions, but those of you who are fans of John and his writing are going to get a kick out of this. John Harrigan has worked at about every job anyone can think of. As a farmhand, to caddying, to making furniture, to cutting pulp, to working at hunting and fishing camps. A college dropout, he broke into newspapering fresh from Milford's Lord & Lumber Company in 1968 at the Nashua Telegraph. He wound up owning and publishing and editing 3 weekly newspapers. He still writes a column in its 38th year in the New Hampshire Sunday News and writes a totally separate column for a dozen weekly papers in the Meredith-based Salmon Press Group. He lives on a farm 3 miles out of Colebrook, where he says he has a 30-mile view encompassing 1 state and 2 foreign countries, New Hampshire, Lower Quebec, and Vermont. John? Thank you.
Boy, that Niebling guy is a hard act to follow. Welcome from the frozen landscape of the northern tundra, the steppes of New Hampshire, not quite the step into New Hampshire. This is a long time ago, somebody warned me never to do a breakfast event because they're as dry as, to put it politely, popcorn gas. Far better, son, he said, to do an evening thing. You get them all lubricated, and they'll laugh at the worst jokes and believe anything you tell them. This is kind of like Old Home Day. It's always like this in New Hampshire. As long as we stay relatively small, and we're going to be bumping into each other for these events, I think it's wonderful. I always thought we should put black armbands on when we pass the 1 million mark in population. I'm reminded of the old line. I was seeing people in the lobby, and I said, you know, here we are again. The old line was round up the usual suspects. That's from Casablanca. On the way down here, somebody asked me about the drive, and I said, it's a little bit like skiing. I said, I have a four-wheel drive big farm pickup. It's more like a tank than a truck. I have what they call snow tires. They do make snow tires for a reason, and they're studded. So my big thing was to get around all the people who were in the way. I'm sure that they were cursing me for being one of those rednecks, which I am when I'm haying. And probably said, he's probably got a gun rack in the back of his cab of his truck. That's a yes. And probably doesn't have any teeth. That's a no. The other thing, I got to tell you, I was having a cup of coffee a minute ago, and Ted Leach, who used to be a fellow publisher and is famous for his marionettes and puppets, all kinds of things, besides serving in, I believe, the House, looked at my coffee and said, this really takes it down a peg. I don't feel any older, but he said, how many stops are you going to have to make home because of that? Okay, I do know what I asked about how much time I should be prepared to eat up, and the Gestapo, that would be just kidding. Said 5 to 6 minutes, but I don't believe it from them. I know what 5 to 6 minutes are. I used to do a live radio show with Martin Murray on New Hampshire Public Radio. We did it for 6 or 7 years. It was great. We did live radio. Who gets the chance to do live radio anymore? We did it by dint of 3 or 4 lines that I would scribble on a piece of paper as topic reminders. Martin would call me, and he found me wherever I was, in a bar, on a tractor, whatever. And he'd say, what's hot? What's not? And I'd give him the lines, and he'd say, okay. And then they'd go on the air with no script. So I kind of miss that. Martin is, New Hampshire's great this way. Martin is now working for, as one of his many duties, Northern Pass, which I vehemently oppose, to put it mildly. That's New Hampshire, and I'm sure Martin, brings to the Northern Pass effort the same polish and respectability and credibility that he did to Wevo. Just kidding, Martin, if you're here. I was supposed to tell something about a connection to the land, and the story came to mind. We have a lot of visitors up in the North Country, and they go to Pittsburgh. Sometimes they go looking for moose. Sometimes they make it to the border of Shashaville. And now, having thought that they've driven off the end of the earth, they come back down, and they may be people I take out for lunch or read at the paper. And many times the conversation ends this way, after they toured the North Country, and they've been wined and dined, and come to my house with their paper, and we gather on the corner as they get into their vehicles to head far, far south, which I think is going off the end of the world. But many, many times they will look around and say, my God, it is beautiful here, but whatever do you do? I guess that means shopping malls. Fishing game, a couple of my longtime friends are here. Fishing game is my favorite division of government. I have a bias because I'm an outdoor wildlife-oriented guy, but had many friends in the department a long time ago and now. I don't know if you saw the headline, but I was caught by the headline saying that fishing game was going to count turkeys. Okay. My first question is why? That's okay. But then my second question is how the hell are they going to avoid counting the same bunch of turkeys twice? My third thing is why bother to put biologists out in the field and get game wardens to help and citizens to keep track of turkeys? Just go over to the general court, they're all right there. The general court wound up with a headline about ski passes. There's a big controversy about whether they should get the ski passes. I mean, for heaven's sake, all they get is $100 a year and a license plate. Are we going to be what's the word? Well, there is a word, but it gets people in trouble. Are we going to be so persnickety that you don't let them ski for nothing? Besides that, I thought they were too old to ski. Just kidding. I know this kid's over there. The other thing, seriously, I get beat up on a lot when I travel around the country. People say, "Oh, you're that state that has 400, maybe 1,000 people in the legislature," and I say, "Yeah, but there's two great things about that. You've got to love it to run for office because there are no material rewards. It's all in your head. Secondly, you cannot buy. There's no way even the greediest corporation can buy 400 people. Just can't do it. The third one is the one I really love, which is there's no such thing as a secret." Back when my father, a kid from Lisbon, from a very poor family, father was a railroad guy, mother taught school for part-time. They didn't have a penny, but they raised, their own food, chickens and pigs and great guys. Dad was a pretty bright student at Lisbon High and had the command of Latin by the time he got out. Very few schools teach Latin anymore. Long story short, he went to Harvard, graduated summa cum laude. He went to Georgetown, aborted his educational path to go serve in the military, Navy. Wound up as a code breaker, buried, as he said, under 5 stories in the middle of Washington. But when he decided where to settle, he evinced a love of the land. Most of us are here because of it. And he was offered many high positions in Nashua and Manchester and Concord. But he said to my mother, he said, "Essie, we're from a small town background and we love the countryside." He said, "Let's go as far north as we can get because it'll take a long time for development to catch up with us." So he went to Frank Sulloway. And I believe that the Sulloway firm is still in business, I think. And old Frank Sulloway, my dad told this story many times. He said, Mr. Sulloway had helped sponsor him to Harvard, and he had got a scholarship. And Mr. Sulloway says, "I'm looking for a small town position, place to set up shop for my family." He said, where should I go? And Frank Soloway didn't miss a beat. He kind of talked like this. But it was just old age, he had something wrong with his throat. He said, I'm sorry. He says, I'd go to Columnist if I were you. The guy says, Columnist? Where the hell is that? Well, it's about 85 miles up the river from Lisbon. Dad says, what's up there? Don't worry, son. He says, you'll be busy. He says, you'll get a cow case, then you'll get a timber overcut. And then divorce rates are good because they swap women every year. Okay, I gotta do some serious stuff. The importance of open space, I mean, where do you begin and where do you end with that topic? I think it's, most of us in this room are here because we understand the precious aspect of open space and how quickly it can be gone, and then we all bemoan it. I am trying to establish a town common in Colbert. We are one of the very few towns that don't have a town common. There is no green space in downtown Colbert. I love the town, but so we have a chance to do that. I have to tell you, it is a hard sell with a certain segment of the community. People who will take a look around at the millions of trees on the surrounding ridges and say, we don't need green space and trees, we've got them all around us, thereby missing the entire point of what an open space means to a town, a place to congregate, a place where the town can come together as one. And again, an issue that has come up with many people in this room, I'm sure, is trying to convince people that open space, green space, may take some property off the tax rolls, but it actually increases the value of surrounding property. Very hard thing to get people to slow down long enough to listen to. And the third thing is that having an open space in the middle of town makes the town more attractive, and people with good skills that we need, and people who I like to look at as replacements for the people we're losing, not being one for growth. I just assume growth stop right where it is, thank you. Why am I reminded of virus? But, I mean, they don't outgrow their host, but again, green space downtown is as valuable and important as green space and protected land out of town. And there are indeed some conservation outfits that recognize that and are trying to help us with Colbert. We are the only town north of the Notches of any size that does not have a common. And from a point of pride, I don't like that. Just as I don't like people beating up on New Hampshire, because I'm tickled to death to be from New Hampshire. I want to say a few words about the current use assessment, something that is widely misunderstood in much of the rest of the state. I know there are many people in this room who have had to fight these battles, have gone before boards of selectmen who are woefully ignorant of current use, in fact may not know a thing about it. I get mail all the time from people who say that their town government knows little or nothing about current use, and that obstacles are thrown in their path every time they try to avail themselves of a law that was written a long time ago, has proved very effective at allowing people to stay on their land if they're using it for farming and timber purposes. And has, by the way, been emulated by, I think at last count, 21 states in the Union. Once again, a little insignificant backward New Hampshire leads the way. A little bit about Northern Pass. I've seen a lot of issues in my time. I've been newspapering for 4 decades plus. I fought, I can't tell you how many battles. I've lost most of them. I've only won a couple. But that's called the juggernaut of progress. I still am offering a $500 reward to anybody who can define progress in 25 words or less. I have never seen an issue galvanize, unite, and anger people in such a fashion as Northern Pass has. We've lost everything up north. Our mills, Tillerson Manufacturing, Ethan Allen Furniture, the list goes on and on and on. We're down to one paper mill in Gorham. The economy couldn't have tanked at a worse time. People are really struggling. The snowmobiling industry came late because of little snow. Everybody is hurting. People are working 2 to 3 jobs. And you'd think that we'd be the very people who would have embraced this, but no. Because it threatens the one thing we have left, which is our beauty. and which leads directly to our tourism. It is the one thing we have left. And despite how people try to cheapen this argument by saying, oh, it's the NIMBY factor. No, it's not in my backyard. I, John T. Harrigan, would not be able to see this thing. It's everybody's backyard. It's an EB. And that's the way the region is looking at this thing. I had a wise guy from down below, down below the notches, approached me at a speaking event a little while ago, and he said, "Hey, what's the matter with you guys up there? You're all wound up over a little power line." He says, "You know, take a drive down where I live." It's from the Londonderry, Manchester area. He says, "We got power lines everywhere. We drive under them all the time." I said, "Yeah, that's my point." So, as hard as we have, as all of us in this room, many heavy hitters have been at this for a long time. Heavy hitters either through time, commitment, or money have worked really hard to preserve and protect for the enjoyment of future generations and current. Tens of thousands of acres of land that are open for recreation, and most of which is open for timber management. You know, many of us see the march of a huge power line across the landscape as an undoing of all the good work that has been done. Not here, please, not this place. Go to Ben Young Hill on Route 145 and get out of your vehicle and take a look around. There's no room in this landscape, mentally or physically, for a gigantic power line, which is a private gain enterprise, which is being built solely to reach the markets of Connecticut and Massachusetts so that Quebec Hydro can sell cheap power. And how can they call this project green? How can this be considered green? The last time I was taught anything in school, trees, that would be those green things, sequester carbon, right? And don't they exude oxygen? So you flood several million of them, and that's a green project? And let's not even talk about the mercury from the decay. Sorry, can't buy it. So, landowner rights and property issues are an almost religious thing where I live, and many other parts of the state, almost religious. That's all you have left. That's what came down through your family or you worked very hard to get. Nobody messes with private property. So I feel kind of like Muhammad Ali, nay Cassius Clay. Great with the rhymes. I made it 2 rhymes that should have been bumper stickers, but we didn't have the money. One is it's not about need, it's all about greed. And the other one is no eminent domain for private gain. I think we have a chance of beating this thing. We are playing a massive game of chess. We're trying to figure out where they're going to go next, and we're trying to get there before they do. Wish us luck. And finally, how about the Forest Society? That bunch, I mean, they pulled off the Franconian arts deal by getting pennies from school children. You know, wonderful, wonderful story. The Franconian arts that you and I drive through is, you know, thanks to their effort and the participation of everybody in the state, every school, every organization. And now they've done it again. It's not just that they managed to raise $850 grand in a heartbeat. It's the number of people they got to step up to the plate. That's the story. I was in Michigan for a family emergency, and I didn't get a chance to send my check in time. But when I get back home today, when I'm done here, I'm heading back up. I'm going to write out my check to help cover the closing costs. And I'll be tickled to death to do it. Thank you very much.